All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. We are going to be getting into the Week 11 lineup builder video here for you guys. Kind of a straightforward slate, so we'll talk about some ownership spots. Going to be a little bit underweight on some chalky running backs, and then a little bit overweight on some somewhat still chalky running backs, but I think we're getting some good spots on them. Going to be talking about some stacks that we can get to, but again, it is a pretty straightforward week, guys, so let's go ahead and get into it. So guys, this is kind of the base build that I'm looking at right now, just kind of recapping both the first look video and also the core plays video. Not much has changed as the week has progressed. So Josh Jacobs going to be an easy running back core play for me going against the Giants. That should be a game that the Packers win easily. Knock on wood as a Packers fan there. And then you got Rico Dowdle also in a very good spot. Both of them should be able to get to around 100 total yards. They're both projected to get right around 20 opportunities as well. And if we look at just like rush attempts, guys, they are the two most likely to get, 19 rush attempts per the projections. We also have Junkins in there. I don't think we necessarily need to get to him. Then you also have James Cook, who's projected to get a high rush attempt amount as well. But the player that a lot of people are getting to, if we sort it by ownership, is also going to be Chase Brown, which the reason why a lot of people are getting to Chase Brown is because Samaje Perine is going to be out. So he is chalk, but he's chalk. I could see myself potentially capping him at about 20%. Now, the reason he's chalk is because of his price tag, 5.7. That is a little bit too low with Perine being out, especially when you have him projected to get, 3.5 receptions, around 15.5 rush attempts. That is pretty solid, and it is a high-scoring game, guys. 48.5 total points. Now, if he is going to hit value, he does need to get some of the work that Perine had been getting over the season, really. Now, guys, in the Week 9 game for the Bengals, their last game, we did see Perine get injured early on in that game, and you had Chase Brown end up getting 95% of the snaps. Now, he only saw 11 rush attempts, which was pretty darn low. Now, he did end up with, 8 receptions for 75 receiving yards. So that's what people are chasing, and I am kind of okay with it. This is a game where it could be a little bit windy, which actually might lead to it being a little bit more difficult to throw the football downfield, which should be something that does help out Chase Brown. And so this is for cash purposes, I think you just kind of eat the chalk here. For GPPs, I do think I'm fine kind of matching his ownership or being a little bit underweight on him just because his upside is a little bit capped, whereas Jacobs and Rico, they have a higher ceiling and also likely floor. That being said, I also like the idea of getting to someone like James Cook, who we know has a massive ceiling. We saw him do that for the first month of the season. We also saw him go for 36 DFS points as well. Gets a pretty solid matchup there against Tampa Bay, and it wouldn't be shocking to see him go off. That offense needs to get right, and that could end up being a good get right spot. A lot of people are getting to CMC. He is the second highest owned running back on the slate, but there is a little bit of pause to him. Okay, guys, so he's coming in about 25% projected ownership. That could end up being lower than it is, but you do have Ricky Pearsall back. You also have Brock Purdy back. The offense is looking pretty healthy, and so overall, you can make an argument that does end up helping him. The offense just being better overall gives him a better opportunity to score a touchdown, which I would agree with. But when you add in Ricky Pearsall, George Kittle being healthy, Juwan Jennings not being healthy, he's not going to be the center of the offense as much as he has been. And so I'm fine getting to him, but I'm probably getting to him about 20% as well. Then from there, we have Jaylen Warren, who a lot of people are getting to as well, about 20%. So we are getting a lot of chalky running backs, but the two I like the most are Jacobs and Rico. And then I would get to Chase Brown, then CMC. Then Warren's fine. Don't get me wrong. He is fine. But, I mentioned earlier on the week, I don't mind Aaron Jones as a GPP upside play. He ended up playing 70% of the snaps in the last game. We also have Woody Marks in a good spot. And then James Cook. I want to be overweight on Woody Marks and James Cook, even though the game for Houston is a lower scoring game. They are 5.5 point favorites. Again, 37.5 for the total points. Don't like that. But if he ends up getting that workload that he got last week, he ends up being a very appealing play. And so, yeah, we could go ahead and put Chase Brown into the flex here. I think that ends up working out well. Receiver-wise, as I mentioned, kind of straightforward. We want to begin to Jamar Chase. That's just an easy click. And then I kind of view Michael Wilson as a core value play. I mentioned this is not as good as Parker Washington was 2 weeks ago, but he's just too cheap for the high-scoring game that game is going to be against the Niners. About 48 total points in that game. And if Jacoby Brissett continues to play as he has played, which he might not, Marvin Harrison Jr. being out is not a good thing, but Michael Wilson becomes too cheap then. Then from there, we do have Gadsden, who I just really like as a play at his price tag. He was someone that I didn't really think was I thought he might be limited or not play as much. It's actually Johnston, the receiver, that's a little bit limited and could potentially sit. If that ends up happening, Gadsden becomes an even better play. But I just love him at his price tag. Now, tight end wise, it is pretty simple. Gadsden, or you're paying up for Trey McBride or George Kittle. All three of those are phenomenal plays. And then there's just a bunch of stacking opportunities that I'll touch on in just a second. Titans DST, we're just punting to them. Lowest price DST that we can get to. That shouldn't go negative. We'll see. Davis Mills did look pretty good in the second half. They're kind of fun. And so kind of just the first build here, or last build for you guys. I'll probably be looking at Jacoby Brissett still, pair him up with Michael Wilson. Then the receiver spot. I mentioned I really do like Wendell Robinson. And I think we'd be fine with him at 5.5. So a decent build off of the cores there. But let's go ahead and talk about some more of those positions that we are getting here, guys. So guys, now when we jump into the receivers and we do sort it by ownership, it is Chase, then JSN, then Michael Wilson. That is pretty straightforward. Now, when we sort it by projected points, you got Chase, then JSN, then Puka. I actually think getting to JSN and Puka in a little bit of a game stack is not a terrible idea. Okay, that game total is 48.5 total points. And so that game could easily end up being a shootout. You could stack Sam Darnold with both of them. You could stack Matthew Stafford with both of them. I think I'd be fine with that. Okay. Especially with Devontae Adams is currently questionable. I do expect him to play, but if he were to end up sitting, Puka Nacua would become an even better option. Nico Collins is not a terrible play, but I just don't like the game total for him. A player that does draw a pretty good matchup is Mika Ibuka going against Buffalo. You could also add on Tez Johnson to that, who also doesn't get a terrible matchup. From there, Wendell Robinson is pretty appealing, but it is kind of just a straightforward slate receiver-wise, guys. It really is. I don't mind getting to a little bit of Johnston or Lad McConkey, but that's going to be a game, that's going to be stacks with our quarterbacks that we try to do. And so let's go ahead and talk about the quarterback plays that we are getting. So in terms of ownership, no one's really chalk, which I think that makes sense for the slate that we have. And so we'll start with Jacoby Brissett. Obviously, if you're trying to stack him, Michael Wilson's going to be a good option, but also Trey McBride is who we're looking at. Maybe even Elijah Higgins, the backup tight end, gets a little bit more work, but I think it's pretty simple. Brissett and McBride look very appealing. Also attach Michael Wilson to him. Another very kind of appealing cheap value stack would be Davis Mills with either Dalton Schultz, maybe Jaden Higgins, who is a cheap value receiver play that I like, and also Nico Collins. And it's a very interesting way to get cheap, like especially if you do like Jaden Higgins, who ended up having a pretty good game in the last game, guys. 7 targets, 5 receptions, did get a touchdown. It also is going to be a decent matchup for him. He did get the second most snaps among the receivers, even over Xavier Hutchinson, who had been kind of the receiver number 2 for a decent amount of the season. Now, for me, guys, I do like Justin Herbert as well in a game against Jacksonville. It's pretty simple with him as well. You go Gadsden, McConkey, and Johnson. I actually set a rule on the 9-5 lineup builder that I want at least 2 of those players in all my Justin Herbert builds. I think that ends up being a decent route for us to go. Then we also do have some simple kind of quarterback stacks, guys, where it's just naturally going to happen when we force a QB stack with a pass catcher. But, Aaron Rodgers in that kind of appealing game matchup wise. You also have Joe Flacco in that game as well. Again, there could be a little bit of crosswind, which makes it a little bit more difficult to throw the football. If that doesn't end up happening, this is still hours, at least 12 hours before we even have to worry about the weather. You guys will know that more than I do when you're watching this video of whether or not that weather is going to be an issue. I don't like to put too much stock into that until about 4 to 5 hours before a game starts. But those two, as it sits right now, decent game stats. I know a lot of people are probably thinking about Jameis Winston potentially with Wendell Robinson. I don't know. Like Winston tends to air it out a little bit more. Maybe Darius Slayton actually becomes a little bit more appealing, but I don't really want to mess with Winston. It is a good Packers defense that he's matched up against. So tough to really love him. Then I do want to mention Jordan Love. So this is actually a decent pivot off of a chalky Josh Jacobs. It would not be shocking to see Jordan Love give us this 30-point DFS night like he did against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Really, he just needs his receivers to catch the freaking football. That was the biggest issue against Philly, who was a tough matchup, and now he gets a very good matchup going against the Giants. Again, I really like Josh Jacobs here. I think he should be a core play, but if Josh Jacobs isn't the one scoring the touchdowns, it's going to end up being Jordan Love, who does get back Romeo Doubs in this one. Matthew Golden's healthy. Dontavian Wicks is healthy. Christian Watson's healthy. So although he lost Tucker Kraft, having all those pass catchers is going to be a good thing for him. And so we have a lot of like stack and options quarterback wise there. And so let's just take a peek at kind of what I'm looking at. running back position wise, so like max exposure, as I mentioned, was Chase Brown and CMC. I'm trying to cap it there. Same thing with Jalen Warren. Like, I like them as plays. I just want to tell the data that I want to be on Josh Jacobs and Rico Dowdle a little bit more. Now, what we could simply do is just bump them up a little bit more. Projection wise, they already are basically owned a decent amount. And then other than that, I do want to get to Woody Marks about 15%. And then same thing with James Cook. I want to get to him about 15% as well because I like their upside that they have in their spots for this week. Then other than that, there really isn't that much to it, guys. It's a straightforward slate data-wise, so we don't have to do anything crazy. I do want to begin to Trey McBride in about 20% of my builds. I think that ends up being a good spot. For George Kittle, I will bump him up to about 15%. And then Gadsden as well. I'm going to try to be a little bit overweight on him as well. Okay, those are kind of the three spots I want to get to, but other than that, nothing too crazy. And then quarterback wise, we're going to do some stacks here. Okay, so we're going to configure the groups here. And for me, it just comes down to Herbert for a quarterback that I specifically want to get more than one of his pass catchers for. So that's why we're doing it this way. So I want at least two of, and probably just only two of, but we'll do Gadsden, Ladd McConkey, and we'll do Johnston. You could potentially do Keenan Allen. I just don't like the limited snaps he's been playing recently. Then the other one that I want to do for this is actually Davis Mills. Again, we do have a little bit of a value stack that we could end up getting to. So we're going to do at least two of, and then we'll do Dalton Schultz. We'll do Jaden Higgins, and then we'll also do, obviously, Nico Collins. So that's it. Now, we could end up potentially getting to also like Aaron Rodgers, and then maybe do DK, Calvin Austin, or like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, tossing that, maybe Noah Fant. But again, like you could also do, I guess, like the Seahawks, Rams one where they like you do Puka, maybe Adams as well if he plays, and then JSN with one of the quarterbacks. I don't think we need to do that too much so. And then I do think we could end up doing the running backs, guys. We know that we want to be on Rico and Josh Jacobs a bunch. But we could also tell the data that we want to be on CMC, who's popping up extremely well, right? Chase Brown as well, who's pretty chalky cash-wise. I'm fine with it. And then we also have Jalen Warren, who I don't necessarily like as much as the data does, but I'm fine with it. Woody Marks, and then you could also toss in James Cook. I'm trying to make a short list for the data of the running backs I want to get to the most, and then it can fill in the flex. So I'm going to do at least two of those 8 running backs in all my builds. Again, I've already prioritized getting to Rico and Josh Jacobs a little bit more so. Then from there, I don't think we necessarily need to do much from there because we already know we're going to get to a decent amount of Jamar Chase and also Michael Wilson. So we can click save there. And then, quarterback wise, we'll just do that real quick. So I don't want to get into JJ McCarthy all that much. We'll do 8% of him. And then from there, I do think I want to get to about 15% of Jacoby Brissett, and then Davis Mills, try to get to him about 10%. And then from the top end, there's not that much more. Herbert's the one quarterback I'm trying to go out of my way to target. Aaron Rodgers, I'm fine with. I just don't think we need to do too much after that. Jordan Love will do a little bit here. We'll bump him up to about 9, even 10%. Again, I think the upside's there for him. This could be a get-right spot for him. Matt LaFleur, a lot of people are dogging on them after that game, the last 2 games really, and so it does feel like a get-right spot. And so let's just take a peek at the lineups that's put out to us, guys. So the top lineup, Brissett, Swift, Marks, Chase, Romeo Dobbs. I'm fine with Dobbs. I don't necessarily think he's someone we need to go over our way to play more of a shoulder shrug option. If you end up on him to close out your build, I'm fine with it. Then Michael Wilson, Trey McBride, Josh Jacobs, and then Cardinals DST, which is interesting. I do think we actually kind of want to prioritize trying to get to the Titans DST. That is one that or even the Giants. I think it's best to punt. I don't think we need to be paying up for DSTs. We'll see the chalkiest lineup: Jacoby Brissett, Chase Brown, Travis Etienne Jr. Okay with that. Nico Collins, Robinson, Wilson, Trey McBride, Josh Jacobs, Texans DST. Again, I get Texans DST. It makes sense, but at the same time, I think the Titans DST will at least give us like 3 DFS points, which most of the time we're okay with that, because that allows us to pay up elsewhere. But overall, I don't mind these builds. They're pretty solid. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel as well. If you guys would like access to any of the tools that you saw throughout this video, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to all the tools for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. Appreciate you being here. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.